what's the geographic center of the United States of America?
Me.
Yeah, clearly.
Ooh, that's a good question, because if you are you talking about continental, or are you talking about
No,
actual?
I'm talking about the
'Cause-
country of the United States of America.
Do we count?
Dead center,
Is
like
this
the
like now
naval.
Hawaii
It's
or
like
something?
it's like Hawaii almost, right?
Yeah, I mean, never did the calculation. I just asked the question before knowing the answer. But you're getting there, because we're going from U.S. Virgin Islands to Commonwealth and Northern Marianas,
Right,
from Alaska to American Samoa.
right.
And if you grew up with a map on your school wall, the classic, and it's called the classic world map from National Geographic, what's in the center of that map?
Europe.
Yeah. So if it's completely distorted our strategic outlook.
Right.
I don't even think, I'm just thinking about maps of the U.S., right? That would include Alaska and Hawaii, and Puerto Rico, but I didn't really even growing up know about all of the Pacific Island territories like Guam or
American Samoa, which is American Samoa, you'd only know if you watched NFL.
you might not even know it's America Samoa because they would be like, oh, Samoans.
Right.
I'm thinking we need to start using a map that properly centers Hawaii.
as the center of the U.S.
Well, I mean,
Yeah.
there are maps that just basically the Pacific is in the center. And the reason the map doesn't look as good is because you basically split Europe up.
Oh, that's just so good. My
Right.
favorite map.
Yeah. So, which is when you're reading these earlier documents like McKinley, the Spanish-American War, mostly tend to talk about Cuba, but McKinley took Philippines and Guam.
Mhm.
And he explicitly said it's because if the Spanish have the Philippines, they can hit Oregon and California.
So we took that in like 1898.
Yeah.
Right.
The same year Hawaii was annexed.
Okay.
Yeah.
So basically, getting those territories that are in Asia was strategically critical for defending the United States against future invasions from Asia.
It was seen in two ways. It was seen as a stepping stone to China, to the new markets. I mean, at that time, trade and military, especially naval power, weren't disaggregated. There was an understanding that you needed both, because that's what the British did. That's what the French did. That's what the Spanish did. It was all very tightly tied. In the case of the European powers, you get colonies, and then you need a navy to protect the routes to the colonies.
We still have that. I mean, the difference is now you have cargo ships go without an escort from the military, but it is because of militaries of countries, especially the United States, that, in general, these ships are not messed with en route.
Yeah.
There's, and when issues come up and it's like, pirates from Somalia or issues with Yemen, then it's like, oh, like piracy on the high seas, yar. But in fact, it's like we've always had to defend against that sort of thing.
Yeah, we took it for granted during the Cold War, because the militaries were there for other reasons. We didn't really see it, and then the U.S. was unipolar, so we didn't really see it for a while. But now we're getting back to basically the norm on the high seas and rediscovering, the U.S. really doesn't have a navy fit for purpose anymore. And China is building one that is sort of the largest peacetime naval buildup the world has ever seen. And that's they're if you're looking at it, if McKinley were here, he'd be going like, what what are you doing? Like, you guys are nuts. And this was, that period was so clear about the U.S.'s economic future being in the Pacific, being to the west. Europe was saturated. It was saturated and armed to the teeth and expanding from that way, coming around this way. And the U.S. still had a chance of expanding this way. And then you got this colonial confrontation in the Pacific, where Yeah, the French raided Hawaii in the 1850s, and there were concerns that if the French set up in Hawaii, then again the west coast of the U.S., which was just becoming part of the U.S., was vulnerable.
It's interesting because there's so much framing of manifest destiny as, just like this evil imperialist thing that America did. But there's obviously this strategic interest there that the U.S. had to keep expanding west and beyond California because of this inevitable conflict that was coming.
Yeah, I think I didn't really learn about the Spanish-American War in school. Did you guys?
I learned a
didn't.
bit.
I never heard of it. I was just guessing when I said 1898, by the way. That was just like I picked it out of thin air.
So, the Pacific outcome of the Spanish-American War is useful to think about because, first of all, that was when the U.S. really became a colonial power, which is an aberration in American. Usually, there were massive there were taking over of lands, like with First Nations, but then it became America, right? And sort of like the Roman Empire, kind of a rolling through type thing. But actually, being an administrative colonial power, that's actually not normal for the U.S., whereas it was very normal for Europe. But the Philippines was the big exception. And the U.S. was, functional. The Philippines wasn't part of the U.S. It was functionally a colony until after the Second World War. And but being a colonial power wasn't comfortable for the U.S., which is why after the Spanish-American War, Spain controlled islands all across the center of the Pacific, and the U.S. only took, if you're Filipino, it was certainly enough, but only took Guam and the Philippines. Didn't take what's now Palau, Commonwealth of Northern Marianas, Caroline Islands, parts of Federated States of Micronesia. And Spain, after they lost the war and the U.S. didn't take them, sold them to Germany. Right? So Germany had them until, and YAP, which we can talk about if you like, but we talk now about optical cables, subsea optical cables. Before World War I, YAP was a hub for telegraph cables, for German telegraph cables. The Germans were trying to set up a competing telegraph system to compete with what were called the Red Lines, which was the British telegraph line. So we're redoing.
I was like, this
the
all
same
sounds so
thing.
familiar.
Yeah.
Just internet cables.
And Secretary Hegseth just announced that about $2 billion worth of investment going into YAP.
This was just one clip from our hour-long podcast with Cleo. We covered a lot more, including answering some great viewer questions for her from our website subscribers. I invite you to join our community too, where you'll get your questions answered, monthly live streams, exclusive episodes, and tons more stuff. So go to ChinaUncensored.tv and become a member. I'll see you there.